Bailiff? I need to release a holiday-themed episode. What do we have on the case list that's Christmas-related? Yes, I know we don't celebrate Christmas, but it's kind of a big deal in the mortal realm, so this sort of thing is expected. Now come on, throw some ideas up there. Nah, everybody's taken the piss out of that one already. Please, Bailiff, we do have some standards. Maybe next year. You know we'll never get a copy of that down here in time to deal with it. Come on, there has to be something we can do. Mame? Well, it's undeniably awful and contains one of the most notorious cases of miscasting in history, but does it really count as a holiday movie? It only has the one Christmas-related song. You're right. Close enough for government work. Let's examine the case of Mame. So, for the second time in a row, our subject opens with a death. So much for musicals being bright and cheerful. The deceased Mr. Dennis has left behind a son, Patrick, who is to be placed in the care of his Auntie Mame in New York. Mame is such a black sheep that even the family photographs look askance at her, so you have to wonder why Mr. Dennis wouldn't trust his only son and heir to her. I'll tell you why. Because otherwise we wouldn't have a movie. Patrick and his mousy nanny, Agnes Gooch, travel to New York in the title sequence, which gets the movie off on the wrong foot with sin number 1. It may sound nitpicky of me to be complaining about the credits, but these titles have the most headache-inducing visuals I've seen in a good long while. There's at least 2 to 3 layers of film in each shot, on top of the main title art, which adds a whole angular cubist aspect. It's just way too chaotic and off-putting. And then there's Agnes's plaintive prayer for guidance.
I love you, dear Saint Bridget, deliver us to be.
If I wanted to hear the wails of the damned, I'd just open a window. This is the first singing we hear in the movie, and it doesn't bode well for what's to come. Finally, we escape from the titles into Roaring Twenties Central, where a large crowd of extras are charlestoning like mad in a valiant effort to convince us that they're having a good time. And at the center of all this ballyhoo is... Oh, no. Lucy, you got some splaining to do. This is the miscast I was talking about, and it should come as no surprise that it's sin number 2. As one of the pioneers of television comedy, Lucille Ball's legacy speaks for itself. But this movie was arguably the biggest mistake of her career. And it was her mistake. Ball was adamant about playing Mame and even ponied up some production money to secure the role. And while the idea probably looked good on paper, the reality of the matter becomes apparent as soon as Lucy opens her mouth to sing.
Though it may not be anyone's birthday, and though it's far from the first of the year, I know that this very minute has history in it. We're here!
For someone so determined to get this part, she sounds about as enthusiastic and joyous as a bitter chain smoker reading a grocery list. Her acting isn't much better and mostly amounts to phoned-in Lucy shtick. Mame Dennis is one of those larger-than-life eccentrics who can easily become irritating if you don't play her right, and Ball's performance just doesn't give the character the warmth and charm needed to make her work. Ball was also in her early 60s at the time, a fact that she and the director tried to conceal by shooting all her close-ups in a severe soft focus. The contrast between her shots and those of the other characters makes some scenes look like a visit to the eye doctor. Better 1 or better 2? This also makes for some awkward moments when Ball snarks on B. Arthur's character.
I feel it's my duty to tell you, it's time to adjust to your age. You try to be peg of my heart when you're Lady Macbeth.
And what are your thoughts on the kettle? Mame is obviously ill-prepared to receive a young child into her home, but she makes the most of it and introduces the lad to her social circle.
Patrick, this is Vera Charles, the First Lady of the American Theater.
Damn, Velma Kelly did not age well. Mame and Vera are the sort of best friends whose constant sniping and bickering conceal the fact that, under it all, they really do care for each other.
I've been meaning to tell you for years. You should keep your hair natural like mine.
If I kept my hair natural like yours, I'd be bald.
except for the part where they care for each other.
I have an astronomical discovery for you. The man in the moon is a bitch!
B. Arthur made no secret of the fact that she considered this movie a huge mess, which may explain why the camaraderie between Vera and Mame never does ring true. Mame takes a liking to Patrick despite his Dennis the Menace-esque habit for playing the trumpet while she's trying to sleep off a hangover, and she wastes no time ignoring all of her late brother's wishes regarding Patrick's upbringing, choosing instead to expose him to her life is wonderful, go out and enjoy it way of thinking. Which would be all well and good if it weren't for sin number 3. The movie doesn't do a very good job of selling Mame's philosophy. The people who antagonize Mame are the usual collection of stuffed shirts, snobs, and killjoys, and make no mistake, they are pretty awful. But Mame doesn't come off as any better. She's improvident, irresponsible, and doesn't seem equipped to take care of herself, much less anyone else. Her method of exposing Patrick to the rich tapestry of life involves taking him to strip clubs and speakeasies. And that's not even the most uncomfortable part. Check out the ultra-progressive school she enrolls Patrick in. Ooh, I need an adult after seeing this. Then there's the subplot where Mame and Vera decide to make over Agnes, who's never been on a date and is so repressed she can't even say the word sex.
Agnes, you're coming out.
Well, that would explain the lack of men. The two older women pretty much bully Agnes into putting on some nice clothes and going out to have a good time. And look where she winds up 6 months later.
I followed directions and made some connections. But what do I do now?
Mame's core philosophy about enjoying life is a good one at heart, but ultimately she represents an extreme that in ways is as undesirable as the stifling, narrow-minded existence she despises. There is more to life than just following the crowd, but there's also more to it than reckless abandon. Eventually, Patrick's trustee, Mr. Babcock, shows up, is understandably horrified to find the kid running around in the Sandusky Academy, and immediately packs Patrick off to boarding school, limiting Mame's visiting rights to the holidays. Oh, and it's October 29th, 1929, the stock market's kaput, and Mame now gets to enjoy the thrilling new experience of being flat broke. Brave soul that she is, Mame enters the workforce, which leads us into sin number 4, the forced comedy routines. Again, this is an idea that I'm sure looked good on paper. The situation-based physical routines are the sort of thing that made Lucille Ball a household name. But they end up coming off as obligatory and forced, like the scene in every Robin Williams movie where Robin Williams acts crazy for 5 minutes. It's always a little depressing when you watch an entertaining comedian going through the motions just for the sake of a laugh, because you know they're capable of more, and you wish they wouldn't just phone it in like this. Despite her lack of skill, Mame lands a job as a shop clerk where she crosses paths with, oh thank Lucifer, Robert Preston! Finally, someone who doesn't sound like a sick foghorn every time he sings. Preston plays one Beauregard Jackson Pickett Burnside, a name so obviously Southern he doesn't even bother sustaining an accent to go with it.
Oh, cute little filly down home said, now don't you dare come on back here without you bringing me a glistening, sparkling surprise.
Is it just me, or does Preston always sound like he's 2 seconds away from launching into one of his songs from The Music Man?
Listen, everybody! Friends, please, everybody listen. Please observe me if you will. I'm Professor Harold Hill, and I'm here to organize a River City Boys band.
Mame hits it off well with the gentleman, which is good because her attempts to impress him end up getting her fired for what is apparently the umpteenth time. The dejected Mame roller skates home to the visiting Patrick and her curiously loyal staff and hits on the perfect idea for lifting everybody's spirits.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
But it's not till next month.
Yeah, the stores have had their displays up since September. Get with the program, Mame. And so they all hold an impromptu Noel with that classic holiday tune, We Need a Little Christmas. And after much reflection, I'm going to have to cite this scene as sin number 5. The song itself is wonderful. Don't tell anyone here I said that, it would ruin what little reputation I have, but in context it's kind of depressing as they throw themselves into this manic pseudo-Yuletide in an attempt to ignore their troubles. And as the song continues, the festivities go from slightly sad to downright creepy. Ugh. No, really, slow that down and change the soundtrack and tell me this isn't a psychological horror movie. Nevertheless, it appears Santa is on their side as it conveniently begins snowing. And hey, looks like Mame got a gentleman caller in her stocking. Even the scary Santa mask isn't enough to deter him. Beauregard is so instantly smitten with Mame that the next thing you know he's taking her off to meet his family in Peckerwood, Georgia. Yes, really. These are the jokes, folks. The kinfolk don't take kindly to the Yankee lady in their midst, probably because Mame dresses for the occasion like antebellum Barbie. But one interminable fox hunt later, everybody loves her and is singing paeans to her glory. All hail Mame! All hail Mame! So Mame and Beau get married, and they spend the next several years on an exotic round-the-world montage, until a sudden avalanche in the Alps tragically widows Mame and leaves her an independently wealthy woman once more. No, I didn't skip anything. The entire marriage lasts one song and 5 minutes of screen time. And that's sin number 6. Beau is little more than a plot device. Given the time period of the movie, I'll allow for Mame making her fortune by marrying into it, but that's the only reason the character of Beauregard exists. To fall in love with Mame, marry her, and then get out of the way so she can go back to being the unattached bohemian she was when the story started. Who is he? Why does he choose this brash New Yorker over the genteel Southern ladies back home? We don't know. Does the marriage or its abrupt end affect Mame in any way? We see her in mourning for about 5 minutes before she decides she's done with it and ready to go back to her living life thing. The character of Beau is pointless and thankless, and seeing the great Robert Preston wasted in it adds insult to injury. Meanwhile, Patrick, remember him? He spends the duration of Mame's marriage growing up into a snooty preppy boy played by Bruce Davison. Mame is disappointed to discover her nephew has grown up the exact opposite of the way she would have liked.
And should they know that I think you have turned into one of the most beastly, babbity little snobs on the eastern seaboard? Or will you be able to make that quite clear without any help from me?
She thinks he's bad now. She should see him in 35 years.
It's a war. It's the reason people like me exist.
Patrick has a girlfriend, Gloria Upson, who's also snooty and boring and has a name that just screams spoiled little rich girl. Despite her misgivings, Mame agrees to meet with Gloria's parents. The Upsons are a terribly bourgeois couple who live in the punningly named Upson Downs, have sons named Boyd and Bunny, are condescending to their black housekeeper, make sneering comments about the wrong sort of people, watch home movies for entertainment, insist on calling Mame Mamie, and, you know, I get the subtle impression that we're not supposed to like these characters very much. But Patrick is determined to marry Gloria, which of course leads to a big falling out with his aunt, which leads to sin number 7, if he walked into my life. This is Mame's big 11 o'clock number, and it's appropriately dramatic and passionate. Mame wonders where she went wrong with Patrick and if he's turned out this way because of mistakes she's made in his rearing. And that's fine. That would make a great subject for a song at this stage in the story if she'd really been involved in his childhood. She had custody of him for less than a year before he got packed off to boarding school, saw him sporadically for a year or two after that, and then spent the rest of his formative years gallivanting around the world with her husband. If Mame were just wondering if she'd wasted time or neglected Patrick too much when he was younger, that would make a lot more sense. But lyrics like, "Did I stress the man and forget the child?" don't really fit in with Mame's behavior over the course of the story. The staging of this song is also very dull. It's just Ball singing in voiceover while she wanders around with this pensive look on her face. It gives us nothing to do beside listen to Lucy sing. And trust me, we've had quite enough of that at this point in the film.
If he walked into my life today.
Mame graciously returns the favor and invites the Upsons to visit her in New York, which of course turns out to be a clever ploy to frighten them away from her precious nephew. And if there's one thing that will send hoity-toity conservatives running for the hills, it's assaulting them with a chorus of unmarried pregnant women.
Stay, simply travel a new highway, dance to a new rhythm, open a new window every day.
See, there's this property near the Upsons' estate that they were planning to purchase as a wedding present for Patrick and Gloria. But Mame bought it out from under them and plans to convert it into a home for Agnes and other lost lambs like her. Which is big of her considering she's partially responsible for Agnes being in her current predicament to begin with. The inundation of riffraff sends the Upsons back to Connecticut in high dudgeon, taking Gloria with them. Heartbroken and humiliated, Patrick marries Mame's Irish maid Pegeen, and soon their shrill-voiced son is off having adventures with his great-aunt.
What?
Again, I did not skip anything. Welcome to sin number 8, the abrupt resolution. Patrick literally goes from hanging his head in sorrow to standing with his loving family in the space of a time dissolve. When did he and Mame reconcile? What made him see the error of his ways? The movie doesn't bother to explain because we're just supposed to accept that Mame is entirely in the right and everything she does will be forgiven. Then there's the matter of Pegeen. You'll notice I haven't mentioned this character before, and there's a good reason for it. She doesn't show up until the last 15 minutes of the movie. She has maybe half a dozen lines of dialogue with Patrick, and little to no indication that the two of them are attracted to each other or that she'd make a better match for him than Gloria. Her role is so underwritten, it makes Beau look like Tevye. She has no interesting moments, no defining traits beyond her aggressive Irishness, and no function in the plot beyond serving as Patrick's reward for allowing his aunt to steamroll over his life. And the steamroller just keeps on chugging. Mame, who, despite her advancing years, still insists on being shot in soft focus, invites her new nephew Peter to join her on a trip to Siberia, and pretty much plows through every single one of his parents' objections until they give in.
School begins day after Labor Day. He's got to be back by then.
I wonder who the teacher is. Oh, I'm sorry I asked. There's something very sad about Mame's awfulness. It has strong Broadway pedigree, a talented cast, and apart from the glaring soft focus, good production values. But the whole is definitely less than the sum of its parts. How could something that looked so promising go so terribly wrong? More importantly, who do I punish for it? I mean it. The movie is terrible, but I can't think of anybody involved with it who really merits condemnation. Lucy? Most of the movie's problems are her fault, but even if I could touch her, the balance of her career outweighs this one black mark. B. Arthur and Robert Preston are making do as best they can. Jerry Herman? The score is the best thing about this whole mess. Gene Saks? Dude directed The Odd Couple. There's nobody I feel like taking my anger out on. What's wrong with me? Am I getting soft? I'm not getting into the holiday spirit, am I? Sweet Lucifer, even I'm not as pathetic a demon as that, am I? No, I just need something to get me back into the game. Something that really gets my blood boiling. Something that I can enjoy sinking my claws into and ripping to shreds. Bailiff, what's my next case? Really? It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
It's